My name is Hannah Brooks. I am 31 years old. I own a financial planning and wealth management firm in Nashville, Tennessee. Every day I help families prepare for the future. Retirement plans, college savings, emergency funds, the kind of decisions people make because they want to protect the people they love. It's ironic. The person who taught me the most about protecting my future was the one who walked away from it. 16 years ago, my father decided that raising me was no longer worth the effort. He didn't disappear overnight. He simply informed me that I was old enough to figure life out on my own. I was 15 years old. I haven't depended on him since. In fact, I spent so many years rebuilding my life that I eventually stopped wondering whether he'd ever come back. The answer, it turns out, was yes. Not because he missed me. Not because he regretted abandoning his daughter. He came back because he wanted $75,000, and somehow, he thought my 6-year-old daughter's birthday party was the perfect place to ask for it. If that sounds unbelievable, I promise it gets worse. The party was held on a warm Saturday afternoon in early May. Our backyard looked exactly the way my daughter Lily had imagined it for weeks. Pink and yellow balloons floated above the fence. A bounce house filled one corner of the yard. Paper butterflies decorated every picnic table. My husband Ethan stood behind the grill, making hamburgers while pretending not to burn the hot dogs. Lily ran barefoot across the grass, wearing a glittery birthday crown that she'd insisted on sleeping beside the night before because she was afraid someone might forget it. Every few minutes, she would stop what she was doing just to remind everyone that she was officially 6 years old. Watching her laugh felt like watching everything I'd spent half my life trying to build. Safety, joy, peace. The kind of childhood I never had. Our closest friends filled the backyard. Neighbors, parents from Lily's school, my former foster family, the Jensens, who had become my real family long ago. Mrs. Jensen was arranging cupcakes on the dessert table. Mr. Jensen had somehow volunteered himself to supervise the bounce house. Nobody asked him to. He simply did. That's the kind of man he has always been. A month earlier, Ethan and I had finished renovating the house. During the renovation, one of my closest college friends, Marcus Hale, convinced us to install a complete smart security system. "You'll thank me later," he had joked while mounting another camera beneath the porch roof. "I hope I never need it," I replied. Marcus laughed. "Neither do I. But cameras don't take sides. They just remember." At the time, I thought he was talking about package thieves. I had no idea those words would become painfully literal. Around 1:30 that afternoon, while children lined up for face painting and parents chatted near the patio, our smart doorbell sent a notification to my phone. "Person detected, at front gate." I glanced at the screen without thinking. Then I froze. Standing outside the gate was a man with graying hair, a navy sports coat, and an oversized gift bag covered in colorful birthday balloons. For one impossible second, my mind refused to recognize him. Then memory caught up. Charles Brooks, my father. I hadn't seen him in 16 years. Not when I graduated from college. Not when Ethan and I got married. Not when Lily was born. Not even when my mother passed away 3 years earlier. 16 years of silence. Broken by a cheerful gift bag. He smiled as though he were arriving 15 minutes late to a family barbecue. Not 16 years late to my life. I unlocked the gate before I had time to think. Not because I wanted him there, because I wanted control over what happened next. He stepped inside slowly. "There she is." His voice hadn't changed, still smooth, still calm, still carrying the strange confidence of someone who assumed he belonged wherever he happened to be standing. Then his eyes found Lily. "And there's my granddaughter." The word landed like a stone. Granddaughter. As though titles alone could erase 16 years of absence. Ethan noticed my expression almost immediately. He walked over from the grill and stood beside me without saying a word. Not in front of me, not behind me, beside me. Exactly where I needed him. My father extended the gift bag toward Lily. "I brought her a little birthday present." Lily looked up at me instead of taking it. "Daddy," she whispered. Ethan crouched beside her. "Sweetheart, Why don't you go help Grandma Jensen with the cupcakes for a minute? She nodded happily and skipped away without another question. Only after she was safely across the yard did Ethan turn back toward my father. I'm Ethan. My father shook his hand with practiced confidence. Charles. It's nice to finally meet you. Finally. As though the delay had been caused by bad timing instead of 16 years of deliberate choices. He glanced around our backyard. You've done well. Beautiful house. Nice neighborhood. I thanked him politely. Nothing more. He studied me for another moment before lowering his voice. I was hoping we could talk somewhere private. We can talk here. It really should be inside. No. His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. It won't take long. I'm not inviting you into my home. For the first time since arriving, the warmth disappeared from his face. He looked past me toward the house, then back at me. I came all this way because I need your help. I remained silent. He sighed dramatically. A business investment went sideways. I've had some bad luck. I'm in a difficult financial position. Again? I said nothing. Then he reached the sentence he'd clearly rehearsed before driving to my house. I need $75,000. The words hung in the warm afternoon air. Children laughed somewhere behind us. Someone started singing Happy Birthday as they tested the music playlist. It felt surreal. I honestly wondered if I'd misheard him. You need, I repeated slowly, $75,000. He nodded. It's only temporary. I'll pay you back. I stared at him for several long seconds. You haven't spoken to me in 16 years. I know. You missed every important moment of my life. I know. You've never met your granddaughter. I know. And your first conversation with me, I looked directly into his eyes, is asking for $75,000. Instead of looking embarrassed, he looked impatient. Hannah, let's not get emotional. I'm your father. I spent years raising you. I think it's fair that family helps family. There it was, the sentence I'd been expecting without realizing it. Family helps family. Interesting, because when I was 15, family hadn't helped me at all. I took one slow breath, then another. Finally, I spoke as calmly as I ever have in my life. You have 5 minutes to leave my property. He blinked. I don't think you understand. No, I replied quietly. I understand perfectly. His expression hardened. If you refuse to help me willingly, I'll recover what's owed another way. What does that mean? He smiled. A lawsuit. I've already spoken to an attorney. If necessary, I'll let a judge decide. Behind us, another burst of children's laughter echoed across the backyard. The contrast made my stomach turn. My father had chosen this place, this day, this moment, to threaten me. He thought I'd give in because my daughter was only a few yards away. He thought protecting her birthday would make me surrender. He had no idea. Every word he had just spoken, every threat, every demand, every lie, had already been captured by 7 security cameras that never stopped recording. And before this was over, those cameras were going to tell the story he never saw coming. When people hear my story, they usually ask the same question. How could a father abandon his own daughter? The honest answer is that abandonment rarely happens all at once. It happens one small decision at a time, one forgotten promise, one missed phone call, one canceled visit, until eventually there's nothing left except silence. When I was 15, my father, Charles Brooks, had already built a new life, a new wife, a new neighborhood, new friends. Everything about his world seemed carefully designed to erase reminders of the old one. Unfortunately for him, I was one of those reminders. I still remember the exact evening everything ended. It was late September. Rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows while I finished my algebra homework at the dining table. Dad walked in wearing his work jacket with his car keys already in one hand. He never sat down. Hannah. I looked up. We need to talk. Something about his voice immediately made my stomach tighten. Adults always say children don't notice much. They're wrong. Children notice everything, especially when the people they depend on begin acting differently. I set my pencil down. What's wrong? He sighed as though I had already become difficult. I think it's time you started becoming responsible for yourself. I frowned. I already do my chores. That's not what I mean. He placed an envelope on the table. Inside were $200 in cash. I can't keep doing this. Doing what? Supporting you. For several seconds, I honestly believed he was joking. Then I realized he wasn't smiling. I don't understand. You will. He looked toward the hallway where Melissa stood quietly listening. We've decided it's best if you make other arrangements. Other arrangements. Such gentle words for something so cruel. I stared at him. I'm 15. I know. I can't rent an apartment. You'll figure something out. I have school. You can still go. I don't even have a driver's license. He shrugged. Life isn't always fair. That sentence stayed with me for years. Not because it was true, because it came from the one person whose job was supposed to make life a little safer. He gave me exactly 2 weeks. 14 days. Not to prepare for college. Not to move across the country. To stop being his responsibility. The first night after that conversation, I barely slept. The second day at school, I told no one. The third day, I finally broke down. My best friend Emily Jensen found me crying behind the gym after class. She didn't ask too many questions. She simply sat beside me until I could speak. When I finally told her what had happened, she looked horrified. You can't go back there. I don't know where else to go. You'll come with me. That afternoon, Emily's parents did something my own father never bothered to do. They listened, not just to my words, to the fear behind them. Mr. Jensen asked practical questions. Mrs. Jensen made me hot chocolate before I'd even finished explaining. Neither of them treated me like a burden. By the end of the evening, Mrs. Jensen looked me in the eye. You'll stay here. As long as you need. I started crying so hard I couldn't answer. I kept apologizing. I'll get a job. I'll pay rent. I won't be any trouble. Mr. Jensen smiled gently. You're 15. Your job is finishing school. That was the first night in weeks I slept without wondering where I'd wake up. Over the following months, the Jensens quietly became everything a family should have been. No grand speeches, no dramatic promises, just consistency. Mrs. Jensen packed my lunch every morning. Mr. Jensen attended parent-teacher conferences. Emily complained about sharing a bathroom with me, then secretly left encouraging notes on my bedroom door before every exam. Love, I discovered, wasn't complicated. It was reliable. My father, meanwhile, almost disappeared. He never asked where I lived, never offered child support to the Jensens, never attended another school event. Sometimes I'd receive a short text message, hope you're doing okay, nothing more, no birthday calls, no Christmas invitations, no I miss you. Eventually I stopped expecting them. Some absences become easier once you stop pretending they're temporary. The next 10 years passed one practical decision at a time. I worked weekends at a local grocery store during high school, saved every paycheck, won scholarships, attended community college before transferring to the University of Tennessee to study finance. Numbers made sense to me. Unlike people, they rarely lied. After graduation, I joined a small financial planning firm in Nashville. The salary wasn't impressive. The experience was. I learned how families plan for retirement, protected businesses, built generational wealth. More importantly, I learned how quickly lives could fall apart when people trusted the wrong person. 5 years later, I opened my own advisory firm with another financial planner I'd met during my licensing program. Most people thought we were taking an enormous risk. Maybe we were. But I'd learned something long ago. Nobody was coming to rescue me. If I wanted security, I'd have to build it myself. Business grew steadily. Then, unexpectedly, within 6 years, we managed investment portfolios for hundreds of families across Tennessee. Around that same time, I met Ethan. We met during a community fundraising event after he volunteered to redesign a nonprofit youth center. Everyone else left once the meeting ended. Ethan stayed behind stacking folding chairs without anyone asking. It reminded me of Mr. Jensen. Reliable people always reveal themselves in ordinary moments. Our first date lasted nearly 4 hours. Not because we planned it that way, because conversation simply never became difficult. When I finally told him about my father several months later, he didn't interrupt, didn't suggest forgiveness, didn't try to explain Charles's behavior. He simply reached across the table and held my hand. What happened to you wasn't your fault. No one had ever said those exact words before. We married 3 years later. Emily stood beside me as my maid of honor. Mr. Jensen walked me down the aisle. When the officiant asked, "Who gives this bride?" Mr. Jensen answered quietly, "Her family does." I nearly cried before the ceremony had even begun. 2 years later, Lily was born, tiny, curious, completely fearless. The first time I held her, I made a promise she would never remember hearing. You will never wonder whether you're wanted. Every decision Ethan and I made afterward started with that promise. A safer neighborhood, better schools, a backyard where birthdays felt magical instead of stressful. Just 1 month before Lily's 6th birthday, Marcus Hale visited to finish installing our new smart home security system. 7 cameras, cloud storage, continuous recording, front yard, backyard, driveway, front door, patio, living room, side gate. Marcus climbed down the ladder after mounting the final camera beneath the porch roof. "There," he smiled proudly. "Nothing happens around this house without these cameras knowing about it." Ethan laughed. "I hope they spend the rest of their lives recording nothing more exciting than birthday parties." Marcus grinned. "I hope so too." Then he patted the small camera mounted beside the backyard gate. "But if life ever gets complicated, this little thing has a perfect memory." At the time, I smiled and thanked him. I honestly believed the cameras would spend their days recording delivery drivers' neighborhood cats and Lily riding her bicycle. I had no way of knowing that less than 30 days later, they would become the most important witnesses my father never realized were watching him. The birthday party continued for another 20 minutes, at least on the surface. Lily laughed as she opened presents. Children chased each other across the backyard. Parents smiled for photographs. Anyone looking through the fence would have assumed it had been a perfect afternoon. Only a handful of adults knew what had almost happened near the side gate. My father had finally walked away after Ethan repeated very politely that if he returned to our property, we would call the police immediately. Charles didn't apologize. He didn't even pretend to. He simply adjusted his jacket, looked directly at me, and said quietly, "You've embarrassed me today. I won't forget it." Then he climbed into an aging black SUV parked across the street and drove away. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. Around 8 that evening, after the last guest left, Ethan and I finally collapsed onto the living room sofa. The house was a disaster. Wrapping paper covered the floor. Half-inflated balloons drifted lazily against the ceiling. Lily had fallen asleep clutching a stuffed giraffe she'd received as a birthday gift. For the first time all day, the house was quiet. Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think so." "You handled him better than I would have." "I didn't feel strong." "You didn't need to. You protected Lily. That's what mattered." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A notification from the home security app. "Motion detected. Front driveway, 11:18 p.m. I frowned. "Probably a raccoon." Ethan smiled. "Or Marcus testing the system again." I opened the app anyway. The live feed showed nothing unusual: an empty driveway, a gentle breeze moving the trees. I dismissed the notification without thinking much about it. The following morning, Marcus called. "Morning. Everything okay?" "Actually, I noticed something strange." "What?" "Our cloud server flagged unusual activity around your property last night." I sat up straighter. "What kind of activity?" "The cameras stayed active for almost 45 minutes after midnight." "So, the same individual kept triggering multiple zones: front sidewalk, mailbox, driveway, front gate, side fence." He paused. "I think you should see it." Marcus arrived an hour later carrying his laptop. The security footage automatically synchronized every camera into one continuous timeline. At exactly 11:17 p.m., camera 1 captured a familiar black SUV parking across the street. My stomach tightened. Charles. He hadn't gone home. He'd come back. Marcus clicked play. The front yard camera showed my father stepping out of the SUV and looking toward our house. No lights were on except the porch. He checked his watch, looked around carefully, then walked toward our mailbox. "He came back?" Ethan asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "And watch this." The next camera activated. Charles wasn't alone. A silver sedan slowly pulled up behind his SUV. Melissa climbed out. She looked around before joining him on the sidewalk. Neither of them knew the cameras were recording audio. Their voices came through surprisingly clearly. Melissa folded her arms. "She threw you out," Charles scoffed. "She thinks she's smarter than everyone." "What now?" He smiled. "Now she pays." Melissa frowned. "How?" Charles tapped the side of his wrist. "The bruise." I felt my heartbeat slow, not from fear, from curiosity. "What bruise?" Marcus whispered. "Keep watching." Charles rolled up his sleeve. The faint marks from where I'd stopped him earlier were barely visible. Melissa shook her head. "That's not enough." "I know." Charles looked toward our fence. "That's why we're making it worse." For several seconds, none of us understood what he meant. Then he calmly walked over to our wooden fence, placed his forearm against one of the thick support posts, and slammed it forward. Once, twice, 3 times. The impact echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Melissa winced. "That's enough." Charles examined his arm, already turning dark red. "No. Needs to look fresh." He struck it again, harder. Ethan stared at the screen. "My God." Marcus silently kept the recording playing. Charles removed his phone, took several photographs of the rapidly forming bruise, then smiled. "There." Melissa looked uncertain. "Are you sure?" He laughed. "Tomorrow. My lawyer gets these. And by next week." Everyone believed she attacked me. The room fell completely silent. I couldn't believe what I was watching. The man who had abandoned me at 15 had just manufactured evidence in front of 7 high-definition cameras. Marcus paused the recording. "I thought that was bad." He looked at me. "It gets worse." He switched to another camera overlooking the front gate. The timestamp read 11:43 p.m. Charles was still standing outside our property. He was on the phone. The audio automatically synchronized with the video. "Yeah, it's Charles." "No." She refused. "I've got photographs." "The bruise is good." He smiled confidently. "No." She grabbed me. "Several people saw it." He listened for a few seconds before nodding. "Exactly. If we pressure her quickly, she'll settle." Marcus froze the image. "Notice something?" I looked closer. Charles was smiling. Not the smile of someone who'd just been assaulted. The smile of someone who believed he'd just created the perfect story. Marcus clicked forward another minute. Charles climbed back into the SUV. Melissa followed. Before closing her door, she laughed. "She'll never know." Charles grinned. "By the time she figures it out, it'll already be in court." Marcus slowly closed the laptop. I don't think your father realizes. That cloud storage uploads footage the moment it's recorded. Ethan looked at me. For the first time since my father had walked into Lily's birthday party, I wasn't angry anymore. I was almost grateful. Because while Charles believed he had just created the strongest evidence against me, he had actually created the strongest evidence against himself. And he had done it all, directly in front of 7 cameras that never blinked. 2 days later, the letter arrived exactly the way Marcus predicted. Certified mail, heavy cream-colored envelope, a law firm's name embossed across the top. My name typed neatly beneath it. I didn't even open it at first. I simply placed it on the kitchen counter beside my coffee. Ethan looked at it. From him. I nodded. I'd bet my retirement account. He laughed softly. You always compare everything to retirement accounts. I own a financial planning firm. It's an occupational hazard. I finally opened the envelope. The first paragraph was almost impressive in its confidence. According to Charles's attorney, I had violently assaulted my father during Lily's birthday party. He claimed I had intentionally grabbed his arm, twisted his wrist, and caused significant physical injuries. Attached were 4 photographs. Exactly the photographs we'd watched him take outside our house. The bruises looked dramatic. Purple, dark blue, swollen. If I hadn't watched him create them with my own eyes, I might have believed them myself. Then came the second accusation. Because of my unprovoked physical aggression, Charles claimed he had suffered emotional distress and financial damages. His proposed settlement, $75,000, exactly the amount he'd demanded in my backyard. I couldn't help smiling, not because it was funny, because he'd made the oldest mistake in fraud. He assumed nobody had recorded the preparation. Ethan folded the letter. So, we call Claire. We absolutely call Claire. Claire Jensen's office overlooked downtown Nashville. She specialized in civil litigation and financial fraud. Within 20 minutes of reading the demand letter, she'd already reached her first conclusion. This isn't really a lawsuit. She looked directly at me. It's extortion wearing a necktie. She carefully laid the photographs beside the CCTV still frames Marcus had already printed. One image showed Charles displaying his bruised arm. The next showed him slamming that exact arm against our fence post less than 12 hours later. Claire smiled. I've defended dozens of fraud cases. I've never had someone provide fabricated evidence this obvious. Marcus connected his laptop to the conference room screen. I extracted the original metadata this morning. He displayed several technical reports, timestamps, GPS synchronization, cloud upload verification, automatic checksum validation. Claire looked genuinely impressed. So there isn't even an opportunity to argue the footage was edited. Marcus shook his head. The recordings uploaded to encrypted cloud storage within seconds. The original files have never been modified. Claire leaned back. Perfect. She picked up Charles's demand letter again. He built his entire legal argument around one assumption, that the bruises existed before he left your property. She smiled. Our cameras disagree. Instead of immediately responding, Claire wanted something else first. The cameras prove what happened after the party. I also want to prove everything that happened before it. Over the next week, our dining room transformed into something between a law office and an archive. Every folder represented another year of my life. Old report cards, school registration forms, employment records, tax returns, medical insurance documents, college financial aid applications. Everything told exactly the same story. One absent parent. Claire built the timeline carefully. Age 15. Charles removed Hannah from his household. No child support afterward. No educational assistance. No health insurance contributions. No college tuition. No meaningful financial support of any kind. She highlighted each year individually. If he tells a jury he sacrificed everything for his daughter, these records destroy that claim. Then came the witness interviews. Mr. Jensen sat across from Claire one rainy afternoon. He answered every question calmly. Did Charles Brooks ever offer financial assistance after Hannah moved into your home? No. Did he ever ask about her schooling? No. Did he attend parent-teacher conferences? No. Graduation? No. College? No. Mrs. Jensen's interview was somehow even more heartbreaking. She described buying my first winter coat after moving into their house, teaching me how to open my first checking account, helping me complete financial aid paperwork because my father refused to participate. Halfway through the interview, Claire quietly stopped taking notes. She looked at Mrs. Jensen. "You loved her." Mrs. Jensen smiled gently. "We still do." When Emily finished her statement, Claire quietly closed the file. "Our witness list is stronger than I expected." Marcus looked up from his laptop. "So is mine." He projected another timeline onto the conference room screen. "This isn't just surveillance footage anymore." He zoomed into multiple synchronized recordings. Camera 1, front yard. Camera 3, side gate. Camera 5, driveway. Together they reconstructed Charles's movements minute by minute. Arrival, confrontation, departure, return, self-inflicted bruising, phone call, photographs, departure again. Marcus looked around the room. If he testifies differently, physics will have to stop existing. Claire laughed. "I like you." Marcus grinned. "I usually work with software. People are much less predictable." Just then, Claire's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID. "It's opposing counsel," she answered on speaker. "Claire Jensen." A man's voice introduced himself politely. "I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Brooks." Claire remained professional. "Go ahead." "We're confident this matter can be resolved privately." Claire smiled toward us. "I imagine you are." The attorney continued. "My client simply wants fair compensation." Before Claire could respond, Marcus quietly handed her another sheet of paper. It was a transcript of Charles's late-night phone call outside our house. Claire read one sentence silently before speaking. "My clients also prefer honesty." A brief pause. "I'm sorry." Claire's smile widened. "Tell Mr. Brooks that we've watched the security footage." Silence. Long enough that everyone in the room exchanged glances. Finally, the attorney spoke again. "What security footage?" Claire answered calmly. "All 7 cameras. The cloud recordings, the audio, the metadata, the portion where your client repeatedly struck his own arm against Hannah's fence before photographing the bruises." The line went completely silent. No denial, no argument, just silence. Claire finally broke it herself. "I'll expect your amended position by Friday." She ended the call. Marcus looked at her. "Think they'll withdraw?" Claire slowly shook her head. "No. Men like Charles rarely stop because they discover the truth. They stop only after everyone else discovers it too." And somehow, I had the feeling she was exactly right. Claire was right. Charles didn't withdraw the lawsuit. Instead, his attorney requested a mandatory pretrial mediation. Officially, the purpose was to encourage settlement. Unofficially, it was his last opportunity to pressure me before the evidence became part of the court record. The mediation was scheduled for the following Wednesday in downtown Nashville. Claire insisted we arrive early. When Ethan, Marcus, and I entered the conference room, Charles was already there. He looked different, not older, smaller. The confidence he'd carried into Lily's birthday party had been replaced by something tighter, more cautious. Melissa sat beside him with a leather notebook resting on her lap. Neither of them looked at me. Charles's attorney stood as we entered. "Good morning?" Claire nodded politely. "Morning." The retired judge serving as mediator introduced himself and explained the process. "This meeting is confidential. My goal is to determine whether a reasonable settlement can be reached." Charles immediately leaned forward. "I never wanted this to become public." Claire didn't even glance at him. Neither did Hannah. "You walked into her daughter's birthday party." Charles ignored the comment. "I only wanted help." "You assaulted my client," his attorney added. Claire calmly opened one of her folders. We'll discuss that. The mediator looked toward Charles. Would you like to explain what happened? Charles sighed dramatically. I visited my daughter because I hoped we could repair our relationship. I brought my granddaughter a birthday gift. Instead, Hannah became aggressive. He slowly rolled up his sleeve. The fading bruise was still visible. She grabbed me. I feared she might seriously injure me. Melissa quietly nodded beside him. I saw the whole thing. Claire made one small note on her legal pad, then she looked at the mediator. Would you like to see what actually happened? The mediator adjusted his glasses. Please. Marcus quietly connected his laptop to the large conference room display. The screen lit up with 7 synchronized camera angles. The title appeared. Brooks Resident Security Archive Cloud Verified Original Recording. Charles frowned. What is this? Marcus answered calmly. The truth. The first recording began. Everyone watched my father arrive at the birthday party. The audio clearly captured him asking for $75,000, then threatening legal action, then refusing to leave until I ordered him off my property. The mediator watched without saying a word. Charles shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His attorney leaned closer to the screen. Claire allowed the recording to continue. It showed me placing one hand on Charles's wrist only after he ignored repeated instructions and attempted to move toward the house. The contact lasted less than 3 seconds, just enough to stop him, nothing more. The mediator quietly made another note. Charles cleared his throat. That's only part of the story. Claire looked at Marcus. You're right. It is. Marcus clicked the timeline forward. 11:18 p.m. The front yard camera appeared. Charles's SUV returned. Melissa stepped out. The room became noticeably quieter. No one interrupted. Everyone watched Charles strike his own forearm against the wooden fence. Once, twice, again. Melissa's voice echoed through the speakers. That's enough. Charles answered with a laugh. No. It needs to look worse. His attorney slowly removed his glasses. The mediator leaned forward. Marcus paused the footage. That bruise, he pointed toward the still image, is the same bruise presented in Mr. Brooks' legal demand. Nobody spoke. Marcus resumed the recording. The next clip showed Charles photographing his arm, then making the phone call. If we pressure her quickly, she'll settle. Melissa smiled. She'll never know. Charles laughed. By the time she figures it out, it'll already be in court. Marcus stopped the video. Silence filled the room. Not awkward silence, the kind that only follows undeniable evidence. The mediator slowly turned toward Charles. Mr. Brooks, is there any legitimate reason this court should ignore what we've just watched? Charles opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward his attorney. His attorney looked down at the table instead. Claire calmly slid another folder toward the mediator. Those recordings are supported by cloud authentication, timestamp verification, GPS synchronization, and forensic metadata. She smiled politely. They've also been independently preserved. The mediator nodded slowly. I understand. Then he looked directly at Charles's attorney. I suggest you speak with your client. The attorney requested a private caucus. Charles, Melissa, and their attorney disappeared into another conference room. 25 minutes passed. No one spoke very much. Marcus quietly packed away spare cables. Ethan squeezed my hand once. Claire reviewed paperwork without looking remotely concerned. Finally, the opposing attorney returned alone. He looked exhausted. My client, he hesitated, is prepared to withdraw the assault allegation. Claire didn't respond. He is also willing to dismiss the financial claim. Still, Claire remained silent. The attorney cleared his throat. We're hoping we can end this today. Claire finally looked up. No. The attorney blinked. No. She folded her hands neatly on the table. Your client fabricated evidence. He attempted to obtain money through knowingly false allegations. He wasted everyone's time. She slid one final document across the table. If Mr. Brooks wants this matter resolved, he will withdraw the lawsuit with prejudice. He will reimburse Hannah's legal expenses. And he will sign a permanent agreement prohibiting any further direct contact with Hannah or her family. The attorney stared at the document for several seconds, then quietly asked, "And if he refuses?" Claire smiled. "Then this footage becomes public evidence in open court." She glanced toward the monitor where Charles was still frozen on the screen, repeatedly slamming his own arm against the fence. "I don't think your client wants a jury to meet that version of him." For the first time since Charles had walked into Lily's birthday party, the balance of power had completely changed. He had come looking for $75,000. Instead, he was about to discover exactly how expensive one lie could become when 7 cameras refused to forget it. Charles signed the withdrawal agreement 3 days later, not because he suddenly developed a conscience, because every other option had become far worse. Claire made sure every word was precise. The lawsuit would be dismissed with prejudice, meaning it could never be filed again. Charles would reimburse my legal fees. He would have no further direct contact with me, Ethan, or Lily, except through legal counsel. And perhaps most importantly, he acknowledged that no financial agreement had ever existed between us. The $75,000 had never been a debt, it had always been a demand. I thought that would be the end. I underestimated how much damage a lie can cause to the person who tells it. Because once the mediation concluded, Charles's attorney withdrew from representing him. Apparently, attorneys appreciate many things. Discovering their client fabricated evidence is not one of them. Within 2 weeks, the State Bar received a copy of the mediation record after Claire requested sanctions for knowingly presenting false evidence. The judge reviewed the CCTV footage personally. He watched Charles strike his own arm against my fence. He watched him photograph the bruises. He listened to the phone call where Charles openly admitted he planned to pressure me into settling before anyone learned the truth. The judge's written order was unusually direct. Mr. Brooks intentionally manufactured physical evidence in support of claims this court now finds to be knowingly false. Those words changed everything. Charles wasn't simply the father who lost a lawsuit. He became the man who attempted to deceive the court. The judge dismissed every claim, ordered Charles to reimburse my attorney's fees in full, then referred portions of the case to the district attorney for review regarding possible fraud upon the court and falsification of evidence. Claire smiled when she read the order. "You rarely see language this strong." I looked down at the papers. "I spent years wondering if anyone would ever believe me." She closed the file. "They don't have to believe you anymore. They only have to believe the evidence." That afternoon, Marcus called. "I figured you'd want to know." "Know what?" "The security company asked whether you'd like to delete the archived footage now that the case is over." I laughed softly. "What did you tell them?" "I said I'd ask you first." I looked through the kitchen window toward the backyard where everything had started. "Keep it." Marcus sounded surprised. "Really?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because someday Lily might ask why we installed so many cameras. And I'd like to tell her that sometimes the truth needs witnesses." 2 years later, life felt wonderfully ordinary again. My financial planning firm had grown beyond anything I imagined when I first opened its doors. Instead of worrying about survival, my team spent our time helping young families avoid the financial instability that so often destroys relationships. Inspired by everything that had happened, Ethan and I launched a nonprofit program called the Next Step Initiative. Every Saturday morning, we offered free workshops for teenagers aging out of foster care and young adults whose families had abandoned them. Budgeting, credit, saving, college planning, housing, the practical skills nobody had taught me when I was 15. Mr. and Mrs. Jensen attended almost every graduation ceremony we hosted. Emily volunteered as a mentor. Marcus insisted on donating security systems for several transitional housing apartments, joking that he trusted cameras almost as much as he trusted people. Almost. Lily turned 8. She never remembered the man who appeared at her 6th birthday party. To her, birthdays meant balloons, homemade cake, cousins' music, and the tradition Ethan started of burning exactly one hamburger every single year. Some traditions are worth keeping. One warm spring afternoon, Marcus stopped by to perform the annual maintenance on our security system. He climbed down from the ladder after cleaning the camera above the backyard gate. "Still works perfectly." I smiled. "I hope we never need it again." "So do I." He packed away his tools before looking back at the small camera. "You know, I've installed thousands of these, but I'll always remember this one." "Why?" "Because most people think cameras protect property." He shrugged. "This one protected something much more important." Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, I stood alone in the backyard. The same fence, the same gate, the same patch of grass where my father believed fear would make me surrender. The camera still overlooked everything quietly from beneath the porch roof. Small, silent, patient. I looked toward the house where Ethan was helping Lily build a blanket fort in the living room. Their laughter drifted through the open windows. 16-year-old Hannah would never have believed this life was possible. A peaceful home, a husband who never walked away, a daughter who never questioned whether she was loved. For years, I believed my greatest victory would be proving my father wrong. I understand now that I was chasing the wrong finish line. The greatest victory wasn't winning the lawsuit. It wasn't exposing his lies. It wasn't even watching the judge reject every claim he made. My greatest victory was building a home where none of his choices could reach the next generation. The cameras didn't save my family. That happened long before Charles returned, when Ethan chose to stay, when the Jensens chose to care, when I chose to stop confusing guilt with responsibility. The cameras simply preserved the moment the past tried one final time to enter my future, and failed. Because homes are built with walls, families are built with love. But sometimes, a quiet little camera mounted above a backyard gate can make all the difference between a lie being believed and the truth finally getting the last word.
The biggest lesson from this story is that being someone's parent is not measured by biology. It is measured by responsibility, consistency, and love. Charles believed that because Hannah was his daughter, she would always owe him something. But respect and loyalty cannot be demanded after years of abandonment. They are earned through actions, not titles. Another powerful takeaway is that truth becomes much stronger when it is supported by evidence. Hannah didn't defeat her father by shouting louder or seeking revenge. She stayed calm, gathered facts, trusted her lawyer, and allowed the CCTV footage to expose what really happened. The cameras didn't create the truth, they simply preserved it. Most importantly, this story reminds us that breaking a cycle is one of the greatest victories a person can achieve. Hannah couldn't change the childhood she lost, but she could create a different future for her own daughter. Instead of passing down fear, she passed down security, kindness, and unconditional love. In the end, that was far more valuable than winning any lawsuit. It was proof that healing is possible when courage replaces resentment.